I don't see him.
Okay. All right. Well, no problem.
I were Paul, I wouldn't be on here after the way LSU played.
Hey, I went to LSU. They just imposed a bowl ban, so at least I don't have to watch them play in a bowl game.
I understand. I think you need a new coach. I think they'll be looking for a new coach next year.
At least defensive coordinator. I think they can ride with Ed for one more year, but defensive coordinator got to go.
Okay, I hope they ride with them, and the guy just won a national championship.
Yeah, but he lost his defensive coordinator and his offensive guru.
He lost
I'm just glad we won a championship last year. Even if it takes another 5 years.
They can't take that away. They can't. Only the NCAA can take that away from me, and I don't think they will.
Okay, I'm on now, but I knew that I would get that abuse. I'm ready for it.
30 points is a lot of points, Paul.
How would you say? I know who's speaking.
Well, what abuse?
That's spanking. Question is, it'd be worse with Florida this week.
Okay.
Paul, I don't know who deserves the abuse more, you or me.
Who's me?
Dorfman.
Dorfman. Why should you? Oh, because of Penn State?
Yeah.
No one down here cares about Penn State but you. I take the abuse every day. I'm ready for it. I can defend it.
At least we play football in the South.
Exactly.
You know, I've got to tell you this story. A couple of years ago, one of the members of 100 Jewish Men had a conversation with me in the parking lot. And he said, Paul, he said, I know how LSU was able to sign Chazon. I don't know how many guys know who Chazon is, but he was a first-round draft choice, outside linebacker, fabulous player. He said, I know how LSU got him because LSU paid him. I said to this guy, I said, let me tell you something. If University of Texas is so smart and so wealthy, why didn't they pay him more? Okay. So that shut him up.
All right. Well, I'm going to stop the LSU banter because outside about two of you, no one cares about LSU. And I'm going to move on to our program. And we're not going to talk about Texas this year. What we are going to talk about tonight is the Astros. But before I get to that, I just want to remind everybody that our next 100 Jewish Men is January 13th. And that, of course, is Wednesday night. We'll be on Zoom, and we're going to have Carrie Saratovsky, who is the CEO of our Jewish Federation, a member of Beth Yeshurun. She's a terrific speaker and a lot to talk about, especially right now. So I hope you guys will join us on January 13th. We've got a lot of programming when it comes to Hanukkah starting tomorrow night. So go to our website. Any questions, let me know, or let Jennifer Rosenzweig know, our wonderful program director, and hope to see you online or at our program this Sunday for Hanukkah. So I wish everybody happy early Hanukkah. Paul, do you want to still introduce Chandler?
Okay, I'd like to do that.
All right, I'm going to turn over to Paul. I want to thank you for getting Chandler for us tonight. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Paul.
Okay. Well, as many of you know, Chandler Rome is the beat writer for the Houston Astros. And quite simply, what that means is that he attends and he reports on every Astros game, both home and away. He's been with the Chronicle since 2018. After spending 1 year in Tuscaloosa, during which Nick Saban asked if he attended college. He did at LSU, where he covered the Tigers baseball team for nearly 4 years. He covered most of the Astros 2015 playoff run as an intern for MLB. So, Chandler, I know you've got a more impressive resume than that, but I'll let you pick up here and let's get started.
Yeah, I really don't. I was looking at the list of speakers that you guys have before and after me, and I saw CEO, and I think someone from NASA is coming in, and I'm sorry that I'm not to the level that these guys are, but I'll try to indulge you guys a little bit. First of all, I want to also wish you guys a happy early Hanukkah, happy holiday season. I hope you all are healthy. Hope you all are staying safe. Hope y'all are staying sane through all this. My sanity's kind of gone and went a little bit during 2020, so I hope that's not something that's affecting you guys as well. But like Paul said, I am the Astros beat writer at the Houston Chronicle. Basically, my life is following and covering everything and knowing everything there is to know about the Astros. I don't want to talk very long, just because when I've spoken to groups, I have found that like the Q&A portion of this is a little bit more lively, and it kind of gets to what you guys want to know and the questions that you guys want. And I'm here for you guys, so I want to answer any questions that you guys have, and I want to really talk about what you guys want to talk about. So I'll talk for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we can just open it up for Q&A. I guess kind of my background. I'm 27. I moved to Houston right before the 2018 season started. So no, I did not cover the 2017 Astros, the team that used the cheating scheme, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. I was not around for that. I started right before the 2018 season. I covered final 2 weeks of spring training, and then I got going in the regular season. And before that, I was in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where I covered Alabama football for a year. I was there when Tua Tagovailoa threw to Devontae Smith to walk off and win the national championship in Atlanta. That's still one of the craziest things I've ever seen, the craziest thing I've ever covered. And I've covered Game 7 of the World Series, and that still was, the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen. I got my start, when I was in high school. Both of my parents are in medicine. My dad's a neonatal nurse practitioner, and my mom's a nurse. So I kind of just thought I'd go into the family business and then get into medicine. And I got into high school, and I kind of realized that I didn't want to do that, that I didn't like science. I didn't like math that much, but I took a yearbook class and as one of my electives, and I started writing a little bit, started writing some feature stuff for the yearbook. And I had a couple teachers tell me I was pretty good at it. So I was like, you know what, if they're telling me I'm good at writing, then maybe I should, pursue that. And I went to LSU. LSU has got a fantastic journalism school, the Manship School of Mass Communication, where I majored in mass communication with a concentration in journalism. I was the editor-in-chief of LSU's student paper for my entire senior year. I was the sports editor for my junior year. So within that time frame, the sports I covered were mainly basketball and baseball. I covered Alex Bregman. Alex Bregman is, I believe, 2 years younger than me. So I covered him throughout his LSU tenure. Got kind of close to him there. I wouldn't say we're tight, we're friends or anything, but we had a pre-existing relationship from there. So I covered him there. I got to see covering SEC baseball. I got to see a lot of guys that are now in the big leagues, come to Baton Rouge and play, and got to see them really before they were any good. And so once I got out of LSU, I did an internship with MLB.com. I don't know if any of you follow Brian McTaggart, who used to be at the Chronicle, but now covers the team for MLB.com. I was his intern for the 2015 season, which just so happened to be, when this Astros renaissance started. I covered every home game that year, covered every home playoff game, and kind of built some relationships there. And, that was only an internship. So once the season was over, my job was done. So I went back to Baton Rouge for a little bit, and I strung for the Advocate, which is the newspaper in Baton Rouge, where I covered LSU baseball full time for them. And then after that, I went to Lake Charles, Louisiana for a little bit, frequented some of Tillman Fertitta's casinos there, and covered McNeese State a little bit for the Lake Charles American Press. Then from there, I was there for about 9 months. I moved on to Tuscaloosa, where I was at Alabama, where covering Alabama football for the Anniston Star. Anniston is a small town about 2.5 hours east of Tuscaloosa. So I actually lived in Tuscaloosa. I didn't live in Anniston. So I was covering Alabama football from 5 feet away. I could walk out of my apartment in Tuscaloosa and look at Bryant-Denny Stadium. And then, the Houston Chronicle job came open. And like I said, I had built a couple connections. I built a couple connections here when I was McTaggart's intern in 2015, and still 3 people had to turn the job down before I took it. And I think that's kind of what I tell people all the time. I've been more luck. There's been more luck than talent in my career. And I can't thank a lot of people enough for getting me to where I am. But, I've been in the right place at the right time a good bit, and I'm just lucky to be where I'm at. A lot of people, when I tell them what I do for a living, I think the two biggest questions I get asked, and I guess I'll preemptively answer those before maybe we open up the Q&A. The two biggest questions I get asked are, one, do you travel with the team? No, I do not travel with the team. I'm not on the charter flights. I kind of wish I was, because I've heard some pretty interesting stories about what goes on those charter flights. So no, I do not travel with the team. I do not stay in their hotels. I am not a part of the Astros. I work for the Chronicle, which means, I have to be objective. I have to be fair. I have to be balanced, and I can't, traveling with them would be a conflict of interest a little bit. So I do not travel with the team. And then the second question I kind of get asked all the time is, well, are you friends with the players? Like, how often do you get to see the players? So from there, I kind of give people kind of what my typical day looks like. And I'll run through what my typical day looks like, and then I think we can kind of open it up for Q&A and after that. So in a normal year, without COVID, without the pandemic, when we could still have face-to-face interaction and not be afraid of it, in a normal year for a 7:00 game at Minute Maid Park, I normally get to the ballpark at about 3:00. That's when the clubhouse opens to the media before the game for an hour. So you go in the clubhouse, and that's kind of when I use my time to check in on guys, to kind of network, connect a little bit. You make small talk with them. Some guys I talk to, and nothing they say to me ever gets in the paper, just because, you want to build rapport, you want to build relationships, you want to get, it's very difficult in my line of work to balance kind of the, you want to have relationships with these guys, but you don't want to be friends with them. You have to know that you can be cordial with a guy and you can have a good working relationship with him, but if he screws up that night, it's my job to write he screws up, and it's my job after the game to ask him about it. So before the game in the clubhouse, that's kind of when you check in and see how guys are doing. You make small talk, chit chat. I'll go, when Josh Reddick was still on the team, I would go tease him about being a UGA fan and about how UGA just can't get over the hump in SEC football and things like that. So once the clubhouse closes, the manager's made available to the media in the dugout. That's kind of where the manager will give kind of the injury report, what's going on that day, if anything's happening, and he'll talk to the media for about 10-15 minutes. And then after that, batting practice goes on, and that's kind of when I use my time to do one of two things. I'll kind of linger around on the field, and you can still chit chat with guys. If you have a relationship with them, they'll come over and just kind of shoot the shit with you a little bit near the batting cages. Sometimes the general manager will come down, sometimes guys in the front office will come down, and that's the time where you can kind of, ask what's going on, kind of get the pulse of what's happening. If it's a busier day, I'll go back up to the press box and write, because before the game, I'm responsible for about 800 words of a pregame story, pregame notes, just kind of what's going on injury wise, what's going on if this guy's struggling, or if they've made a lineup change, or what are they doing going forward, things like that. So 800 words has to be in before the game even starts. And then once the game starts, I have to have, especially if it's a night game, I've got to have 800 words filed at the final out, no matter what. So you can understand why I root against walk-off home runs. I root against, blown saves in the ninth inning. I like things to be settled a little bit before the ninth inning, but sometimes that's not the case. And regardless of what happens in the game, once that final out happens, within 5 minutes, I got to have it into the desk, because we still print a newspaper, and there's a hole in the newspaper, and I've got to fill it. And, we've got to fill it with what happened in the game, even if some of you don't get it, because we have so many different editions, and we have a late edition that goes here and a earlier edition that goes to this part of Houston. And I fully understand that, some of you guys may not get the early game story or what happened in the game in the paper. And that's just kind of part of what we deal with. So once those are sent in, we go back into the clubhouse. We talk to the manager after the game. He answers questions about what happened in the game, what went wrong, what went good. We go in to the players gathering area, where you go up to who did well, You go up to who didn't do well, and you talk, and then from there you run back up to the press box, you throw a few quotes in what you file at the final out, and you send that in. And then I also have to do a post-game analysis piece after every game as well. So just something I didn't touch on in the game story, whether, a reliever threw well, or, kind of a trend going forward, or kind of what kind of I saw as how I wanted to analyze this specific game, because, Astros fans want content. They want a lot. We've seen that they respond very well to a lot of different things, and our analysis pieces do better than our game stories, because obviously you guys watch what happened in the game, and a lot of you don't need me to regurgitate what happened in the game. That's why I pride myself on, when I'm writing a game story, I try to not give you play-by-play, because I feel like most of you guys watched the game, or you saw the final score, or you heard that Carlos Correa had 3 hits, or you heard that Jose Altuve made a crucial error that kind of cost. Like, you don't need me to tell you that. You need me to tell you, like, what went into Carlos Correa getting the 3 hits. Did he make a swing adjustment? Did he know that what the pitcher was throwing? Did he have a tip? Did he have a tell? You need me to tell you why Zach Greinke pitched well into the 7th inning. Did he change something after the first time through the order? So that's kind of what I try to focus on when I write. I try very, very hard to stay away from play-by-play, to stay away from just here's what happened today. In the first inning, this happened. In the second inning, this happened, because you can watch TV, you can watch the game if you want to know what's going on there. This year was a little bit different. The clubhouses were all closed. I did not, after spring training, after March, I'm trying to think when they shut down spring. So after they shut down spring training in March, I did not see an Astros player or Dusty Baker face to face this entire year. Everything was done via Zoom, just like we're doing right now. And it was difficult, because Dusty Baker is in his first year, and, I don't have a real relationship with him. So when they were playing as poorly as they were playing in the regular season, it's up to somebody to ask what's going on. And it's very cumbersome and awkward when it comes through Zoom like this, when you don't have a relationship with somebody. And it led to some interesting encounters. And, with everything going on with the scandal, and the fallout from that, some of these guys are a little more hesitant to talk. And one of the travesties of a closed clubhouse is, if you have a relationship with somebody, you can go up to them and say, hey man, I just need you for 2 or 3 minutes. And they know what kind of your prerogative is. They know what you're asking them. They know they have a good enough relationship with you that they'll stop and talk to you. All of our requests went through the Astros this year. So it was very easy for these guys just to tell the Astros, no, I'm not coming to do the Zoom today. So there were a lot of guys that we barely talked to this year. So it made covering the games a little bit more difficult. I went to Minute Maid Park for however of the 60 games. I think they played 29 at Minute Maid Park, and you sit in the press box and you don't leave. I was in a mask the whole time, and you're in your press box seat for 4 hours, and that's how you're writing. You got to go more off kind of what you see. You got to go more off kind of, and that's why I traveled. I did travel this year to most of the road games. There were a couple stadiums I couldn't get into because of their local laws, but that's kind of why I went on the road with them. Because I can only see so much on TV. And I think going on the road this year and following them, even though I couldn't be face to face with them, even though I couldn't get in the clubhouse, I thought it was important that we be there, and I thought it was important that we kind of see the atmosphere. And I gotta tell you, it was really eerie. It was one of the most, I don't know if uncomfortable is the right word. It was just very eerie to be in an empty ballpark, and to hear what the kind of chirping back and forth from the dugout, to hear kind of the crack of the bat like you've never heard it before, or when defense, or when a ground ball double play, or when they're calling shifts from the dugout, when Joe Espada's placing the infield, or Gary Pettis is lining up the outfield, you could hear everything. And it was a very interesting way to watch a ball game. But yeah, it was a crazy year, as I think it's been for everybody. I hope and pray. I wake up every day hoping that the vaccine's ready to go. I think they're meeting tomorrow. Let's get it out there and let's get it going, because I need it to get back to normal. I would love to get back in the clubhouse again and talk to these guys and kind of give the coverage that I'm used to giving, because I don't feel like this year, and I'm not alone, I don't feel like this year was, my best year of covering the team. And I think that goes across the league. A lot of writers will tell you that it was very difficult this year, but the show goes on, and Astros fans want coverage no matter what. And I'm here to provide that. I pride myself on being fair and objective, but also, not hiding what's going on. The team won 100 games for 3 straight seasons. So there was a lot of good written about this team from 2017 to 2019. And then, I tell people all the time, after Altuve's walk-off home run against the Yankees in the ALCS, everything just sort of went downhill. Nothing's been good for the Astros since then, maybe aside from this past playoff run. So chronicling that and being there firsthand for all of that has been very interesting. It's been one of the greatest challenges of my young career. Hope I can continue it, and I hope I do a pretty good job. But it was an interesting year in 2020, and the Astros are positioned very uniquely. Their championship window, I would not say is closing at all, but it's narrowing a little bit. I wouldn't say it's closed, but it's narrowing a little bit. They've got a lot of questions they've got to answer this offseason. They've got to rebuild the outfield. They've got to find some bullpen arms. They may go get a starting pitcher. They've got to go get a backup catcher, and they're supposed to report to spring training in a month and a half. So a lot to be done in very little time. It's actually, we got lucky a little bit, because in a normal year, this would be the winter meetings. This would be the third of the 4-day winter meetings. So in a normal year, they were supposed to be in Dallas this year. I would be in Dallas, kind of working the lobby, seeing what's going on. But nope, this year it's a virtual winter meetings, and everything is supposedly being done via Zoom. I don't know what the front offices and the GMs are doing via Zoom, but that's what's happening. James Click will actually talk to us tomorrow. So I'll have a little bit more insight than maybe what I can give you tonight as to how the Astros are thinking and what they're doing. He's going to speak to us tomorrow via Zoom. But we got lucky, though, because I can talk to you guys and I can answer your questions, and I'm not at the winter meetings. So that's kind of all I have. I think I rambled too much anyway. I think I went a lot longer than I thought I would. So I am ready and willing to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Chandler. I'm going to turn it back over to Paul. Paul, do you want to handle the Q&A?
All right, I want to handle it, and I want to be the first one to ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Chandler, this is really a question that has nothing specifically to do with the Astros, just baseball in general. As a youngster growing up in the 50s and 60s, teams very rarely shifted for batters.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one batter that I can think of that the team shifted for, and most of the guys my age know the answer: Ted Williams. He was an automatic shift. But nowadays, they're shifting for every batter. And a lot of times, the television announcers don't even mention it. It's just taken for granted. So here's my question. Why don't the teams try to train left-handed hitters to bunt as well as to hit to the opposite field? At least they would, at least the defense would have to go back to a traditional assignment.
I think you bring up an interesting point, because the Astros were at the forefront of this. When Jeff Luhnow took over the front office, they became very analytical, and they were among the leaders, even when they were bad, even when they were losing 100 games a year, when they were tanking to get the top overall picks. They were leading the league in shifts. And it's been brought up a lot because a lot of front offices have kind of got onto this, and you see a lot more shifting, and you see a lot more hits being taken away, and it's being asked, like, should they ban the shift? I mean, I don't think so. Maybe because I've kind of grown up with the shift. I've kind of seen it. That's kind of how I've always kind of seen baseball played. And I kind of subscribe to the theory, like Paul sort of mentioned there, like, if you don't like the shift, like, learn to hit the other way, learn to bunt. Like Kyle Tucker, if you guys watch Kyle Tucker from his rookie year to this year, it's a different person, because when Kyle Tucker came up in 2018, all he did was hit ground balls to the right side straight into the shift. And now, even if when you watch him this season, he bunted a little bit. he hit the other way a ton, and he's it's not even as much hitting the other way as it's hitting the ball up the middle. And it's hitting the ball up the middle, using all fields. And Kyle Tucker's exit velocity, how hard he hits the ball so hard that usually he can get away with pulling a ball into the shift, because if you hit it hard enough, it'll get by everybody. But I think he's a guy that you can look at as because that was one of the things he struggled with when he came up from AAA, was he was getting shifted in AAA all the time, but the pitching was just, it's not what it is at the big league level. So he was getting shifted, but he could still handle it. He got up to the big leagues, and these guys study him. Like, these guys know everything he's going to do before he even steps in the batter's box. So he has to be a little bit one step ahead. So, I understand why people don't like the shift, because the game, it makes the game a little less exciting. There's not a lot of balls in play. There's not a lot of traffic on the base paths, especially in this era of baseball where it's very strikeout oriented and it's very home run oriented. Part of that is because of the shift. Some teams are training their hitters to focus on launch angle, to focus on hitting the ball in the air, hitting the ball to the outfield, using all gaps, because they don't want to hit into the shift. But you also have to, be adaptable. You have to be able to, adapt, and you have to see how teams are playing you. And I think Kyle Tucker is a prime example of a guy that's done that. And I think there are other players, Yordan Alvarez, he doesn't hit many balls on the ground, but he's a big left-handed hitter that they're going to shift to when he comes back in 2021. Now, he hits a lot of home runs, which takes you can't shift a home run. So that helps. But he's going to have to learn too to use all fields. He's going to have to learn a little bit better to hit the other way, to hit up the middle. But I guess I'm a little conflicted, because I'd like to see the game be a little bit more exciting. I'd like to see a little bit more action on the base paths. I'd like to see more balls in play. But I also kind of say, if you don't like being shifted, tough, like figure out how to hit the other way. So it's a good question, and it's one that a lot of people in baseball are struggling with, to kind of figure this out, how to have the best of both worlds, how to let these analytically sound front offices deploy things like this, but also how to make the game more exciting. And it's something that I don't think baseball's figured out yet.
Paul or Chandler?
Yep.
I've got a question. Thank you for doing this. We heard that the Yankees may have also been involved in some sort of cheating scandal. I think it came out through DraftKings, and the Yankees have tried to shut that down. So that's the first question. And the second question is it going to be any more difficult for the Astros to sign players because of the scandal? So I kind of cheated and gave you two questions. Thank you.
Yeah. So those are two good questions. And I'm going to preface this by saying, to some degree, every team in baseball steals signs, like everyone, even the ones that are tanking, even the ones that lose 100 games a year. To some extent, every team in baseball steals signs. And I think if you were to talk to Commissioner Rob Manfred, he probably regrets the way he handled the Apple Watch incident with the Red Sox and the Yankees in 2018. He let it go too far. He let this wildfire just burn way too far, take up too much, and it got to where the Astros were doing what they were doing. And we can sit here and debate until we're blue in the face whether the Yankees were using technology, or whether the Dodgers were, or whether, I've heard about the Brewers, I've heard about the Rangers, I've heard a lot of different teams, but when it comes down to it, the Astros crossed a line that you just can't, that the line was there and the Astros didn't just cross it. They crossed it, ran a lap, and then crossed it again. You can't, the way they were doing it was just, and the one thing that I've always kind of thought since this all came out was like, this is one of the smartest front offices and one of like the most forward thinking front offices in baseball. Like, how in the hell did they not have a better system than banging on a trash can? Like, it just seems so I can't rationalize that. But anyway, I get that a lot. Like, well, the Red Sox did it and the Yankees did it. And like, while I agree that they were probably doing something illegal, and they were and the Red Sox have been investigated for it, so have the Yankees, and I hate to say it, but the Astros are just the ones that got caught. And I think it goes back a little bit more to kind of the culture that Jeff Luhnow let fester within the clubhouse. Not many clubhouses have guys willing to go run their mouths to media outlets talking about what happened. Mike Fiers broke a clubhouse code that you just don't break. And that's, the fact that he did that, I think does speak a little bit more to maybe the culture that was going on there. And, the sign stealing was just going on top of it. And I think it was just a lot that just kind of overflowed. So as far as whether it will affect free agency and whether it will affect, guys wanting to come here, I'm just going to say money talks. Like, I think guys are going to go where they're offered the most money. I think, guys want to win too. At the core of it, guys want to win. And there are guys that see what the Astros have coming back, and they're going to be in contention. They're going to be able to compete for a division and get into the playoffs again, and will probably be among the favorites in the American League this year. There are guys that want to win a World Series. Will it force James Click to maybe overbid for a guy? Maybe. I mean, will a guy need his pot sweetened a little bit to come to Houston? Maybe. I certainly think so. Like, that's just my opinion. I haven't heard this from anybody. You talk to agents every now and then, and agents say this. They say, yeah, it would be difficult for some guys to go there. But I think at the end of the day, like I said, money talks a lot more than kind of the stigma, if you will. And I think the one thing that would maybe give them a little bit of pause is hopefully we have fans back in the stands in 2021. I'm not sure if some guys want to come here and be booed for something they didn't do, because I thought it was very interesting that when we were in spring training, Michael Brantley was getting booed. Kyle Tucker was getting booed. Yordan Alvarez. It's like these guys were nowhere near the major league club in 2017. Brantley was with the Indians. And I feel like that's going to be the norm going forward here. I don't know for how long, but I do think the Astros are going to have to deal with this. They're going to have to deal with heckling. They're going to have to deal with booing. They're going to have to deal with being hated for a little bit longer. And I don't know. There may be some guys that don't want to do that. They don't want to be exposed to that. But most ball players I know are driven. They want to win. They want to be on a team where they can win and be put in a best position to succeed. And no matter what you say, no matter what the Astros did in 2017, I don't think you can question that they have been they've been, a place where winning has happened. They did it in 2019 without cheating. They were within one game of the World Series this year without cheating. This core of players has spoken for itself with its performance. So I think if the money's right, I think guys will come here, but I do think it'll be a little bit tougher to land some guys. I'm not saying all guys though.
Chandler,
Yep.
I want to ask this. I'm a St. Louis Cardinal by birth, and if you're part of the Cardinal Nation, you stay that way except when I'm here, which is all the time, and I'm an Astro fan. But I lived through Luhnow being a god in St. Louis to the Cardinals. I mean, I was devastated when he came here, ended up being happy. Why didn't Jim Crane rehire both Ludlow and A.J. Hinch?
Well, I think certainly you can look at what the Red Sox did, and that question becomes a lot more prevalent, or it becomes a lot more pertinent. There's been, Jeff Luhnow just sued the Astros, and in his, and in the, in the suit, it says that Rob Manfred and Jim Crane brokered a deal about the punishments before the report was even released. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. That's what Jeff Luhnow is alleging. I think Crane had no choice but to fire both of them. I think when you read about the culture and how Rob Manfred excoriated the Astros culture in that report, He called it insular. He called it very problematic. He called it, more betrothed to results than kind of how people felt. And I think you have to remember too that the sign stealing revelation came right on the heels of what Brandon Taubman did after the ALCS when he berated a group of female reporters in the clubhouse. And Brandon Taubman was Jeff Luno's guy. Like Jeff Luno hired him. That was his right-hand man. There was a lot more leaking from this ship than just the sign stealing. I'll put it to you that way. So I think Jeff Luno's fate was sealed a lot more than AJ Hinch's.
Yeah.
But as it pertains to AJ, look, I love AJ. AJ is one of my favorite people in the world. He is as genuine as he comes across on TV in an interview. He is like that in person. But you can't reconcile, sitting 6 feet away from the trash can banging and doing nothing about it. He went in there and he banged he destroyed the TV monitor and all that. But, and he's even come out and said that he made mistakes. He should have held a team meeting and he should have ended it. And that's just one of those things that he's going to have to live with now. But I think it's certainly a fair question about AJ, whether Jim Crane maybe should have done what the Red Sox did, maybe, have an interim for 2020 and then let AJ come back. I don't know. Now, I don't think the Astros really care what people think about them, but it would have been from a PR perspective, it would have been horrible. But I think what you've seen with the Red Sox, though, the Red Sox brought Cora back and, they had 2 or 3 days of negative press and then it kind of blew over. So who knows? Maybe it would have worked, but AJ's in Detroit now. Dusty Baker's here. I don't know for how much longer. And then, James Click's going to get to hire the manager that he wants, because I'm not saying James Click doesn't want Dusty Baker, but James Click didn't hire him. Jim Crane did. So it'll be interesting to see how that manifests after this season, because his contract's up after this year.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hey, Chandler.
Yep.
Getting back to the free agent stuff.
Uh-huh.
Any comments on whether we have a shot at retaining any of our free agents that are on the market right now? And if not, any ideas of who we might be going after to come here?
So I think your best bet of the departing free agents, it was probably Michael Brantley. I don't think George Springer's coming back. Josh Reddick's already said he's not coming back. And even if he wanted to, I don't think the Astros would take him back. Brad Peacock is kind of still recovering from surgery, so I'm not sure where he's going to end up. But yeah, I think James Click said, and we'll know more, like I said, he's going to talk tomorrow, so I'll have a lot more information tomorrow. But he said earlier in the offseason that they were going to prioritize short-term contracts. I've heard through the grapevine that they want to lower the payroll, not to a point of shedding the payroll, but they want to get below the luxury tax, which I think it'll help that Reddick's 13 million's off the books, that Springer's 20 something million's off the books, that Osuna's 10 million's off the books. So inherently that helps. But judging by what James Click said, they want a shorter term deal and flexibility and all that, that to me would signal that Michael Brantley would be the guy that, if they're going to target any of them, it would probably be him. He was very well liked in the clubhouse, and he's one of the most pure hitters I'm very young, so I haven't seen a ton, but he's one of the best pure hitters. That his left-handed stroke is just so beautiful, and he's just so consistent and so steady. The only thing with him is you worry about durability. He had injury history in Cleveland, and if he does come back, they're going to need him to play almost every day in the outfield. And with his injury history, you wonder if he can be an everyday defensive player, especially at his age. And with that, like, how much do you want to pay him? And I think the thing that you have to remember in free agency, the Astros return Altuve, Bregman, Correa, Gurriel, Tucker, Alvarez. That's 6 really, really good hitters. They need to rebuild their outfield. Don't get me wrong, but they're maybe not going to be as aggressive in for offense, for power, because they've got those 6 guys coming back. Now they need new players, obviously, but there are other teams in baseball that need offense a whole lot more than the Astros. So those are the ones that are going to be a lot more aggressive, maybe with a guy like Springer. I would assume Springer's going to end up with the Mets. Maybe Brantley, that's kind of what I was talking about with Brantley. Maybe a team needs a left-handed hitting corner outfielder, and they need, a consistent guy that they can stick in the cleanups, but they need that a lot more than the Astros do. And you could argue that the Astros need Michael Brantley a lot, and they do. But there are other teams that may need them more. So if you're asking me about the guys that just left, I'd probably say Brantley's your most likely. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if you had to pick one, I'd probably pick Brantley. And then as far as guys they could go after, there's a lot of outfielders out there. Jackie Bradley Jr. makes sense. They need a center fielder. He's a great defensive center fielder. His offense has kind of tapered off a little bit in the last 2 years, but he was really good here. He was really good against the Astros in the 2018 ALCS. He was the MVP of that series. Jock Peterson was with the Dodgers, maybe him. Robbie Grossman, who used to be an Astro. He's a free agent, and he had 2 really good years in Oakland, like really kind of reinvented himself in Oakland. But they need a center fielder. So, and you have to remember too, that 2 things, they need a center fielder, and it's not just free agency. They can make trades. Their farm system's not the greatest in the world, but they still have some trade capital that they can unload. And I think you have to look too at how the Astros have been built. Josh Reddick still has the longest free agent deal ever given to anyone in Jim Crane's ownership tenure, 4 years, $52 million. This is not a team that spends money on free agents. This is not a team that signs free agents to long deals. Look at Jeff Luno's most, shrewd acquisitions. Garrett Cole was in a trade. Justin Verlander was in a trade. He made shrewd trades to get the team over the top. They drafted Bregman, they drafted Correa. This is not a team built by free agency. And then you look at James Click, he came from Tampa Bay. They're almost the same way. They did a lot of trades. They did a lot of drafting and developing. They did not do a ton of free agency. So I wouldn't be surprised even if you see the Astros make a trade or 2, because that's kind of how James Click's operated, and that's how the Astros have operated their last few years as well.
Would you be happy with Miles Shaw filling in as center fielder? Not a great offensive guy, but very good defense.
Yeah, I mean, now granted, he didn't get a lot of opportunities, and I think this is a problem that the Astros have to address. This is more kind of going forward, but the back half of their 40-man roster is not very good. Abraham Toro, Taylor Jones, Miles Straw, they haven't been given much opportunity, but they haven't really showed that they're worthy of being everyday guys. And this team wants to be flexible. They want to be able to give guys off, and they want to be able to, have as much versatility as possible. I don't see Miles Straw as an everyday player. He's got plus speed. His defense is really good. He profiles as a 4th outfielder. He profiles as a Jake Marisnik with a little less of a bat. So if they get to a point where they go into spring training with Miles Straw as their starting center fielder, they would have had to miss on a lot of guys. Like a lot of guys would have just been too expensive, or, didn't want to come because of the scandal, or they just didn't or the trade asking price was too high. I'd be very surprised if Straw was the guy going into spring.
Thanks.
Hey, Chandler, I got a question.
Yep.
So you went to LSU and you were a reporter there. How have you seen Bregman develop throughout the whole, his whole years as watching as a LSU student, LSU reporter, and then now as an Astros reporter?
Yeah, he's a lot different. He was trying to find I don't think arrogant begins to describe it. He was very cocky at LSU, and for good reason. He knew from the moment he stepped on the field at LSU that he was the best player there, and he backed it up. But I know for a fact when he was a freshman, he had to be sat down by a lot of the seniors there, and he had to be kind of, I don't know, hazed is the right word, but he had to be kind of talked to a little bit to kind of, this is a team, you're great and all, and we love you, and you're going to start at shortstop from day one, but you need to know that this is a team. And now you look at him with the Astros, and he's one of the most loved guys in the clubhouse. Like everybody loves You know, I'm sure you guys have seen the stories that he learned how to speak Spanish so he could communicate with Correa and Altuve and Gurriel on the infield. You know, so he speaks Spanish. You know, he transcends every stereotype, every ethnicity, every race, everything in the clubhouse. He is the kind of the glue that holds the thing together. So he's grown in that aspect. His cockiness was there when he got to the Astros. You know, I don't know if this story's public or not, but you know, there was a lot of buzz right around when he was going to be called up. And he went on a radio station. I don't know if it was in Houston. I don't know where it was, but they were going to call him up like that weekend, and they were playing the Angels. And the radio host asked him, well, do you know what color jersey do you think you'll be playing against in your first big league game? And he said red, intimating that he'd be called up that weekend to play against the Angels. The Astros didn't call him up because of that. You know, they did that as a little bit of a punishment, to kind of put him in his place a little bit. So he's a guy that can be cocky because he can back it up. He's one of the best players in baseball, but he's had to find that fine line of being the showman, of being kind of arrogant and cocky, and also being a team guy. And I think he's found that, and I think he's really thriving in that role now. We've got a couple in the chat that I guess I'll read out. Mike asked, Astros lost Keuchel, Morton, Cole, McHugh, and other pitchers, and Verlander, but continue to have pitchers like Valdez and Urquidy step up. Who will be the starting pitchers for Houston in 2021, and who are the up-and-coming starters we should look out for? You are right. The one place where the Astros have really separated themselves is pitcher development, and I think you saw that this year. Just they had guys that, quite frankly, had no business being in the big leagues doing pretty well. You look at Anoli Paredes, you look at Andre Scrub, you look at Christian Javier. I mean, all these guys were considered a year, maybe 2 years away, and they came up and did really well. Jose Urquidy was phenomenal in 2019, and he was a guy that started that year in high A. So if you had to ask me right now who the rotation will be in 2021, I'd probably say Greinke, McCullers, Urquidy, Javier, and Fromber. And Fromber may be the opening day starter. He was unbelievable this year. That was far and away the biggest surprise, and the biggest, the biggest positive the Astros can take from this year was that Fromber figured himself out. Because if he is like that, if he's like that consistently, that's a top of the rotation guy. He's got top of the rotation stuff. As far as up and coming guys, Forrest Whitley still exists. I'm not sure what the deal is with him. I think it is worthwhile to remember that he is young. He was a high school draftee. He's only 22, 22 or 23. So he's still a young guy, but he's really got to put it together. He had the drug suspension, and it seems like with him, every time we see Forrest, he's always changed something. He's always changed his diet or his workout routine or where he's living or who he's working out with. And he really just needs some consistency. He needs some continuity. He needs to just be able to go out there and just kind of stop thinking a little bit and just let it rip. So they haven't traded him for a reason. They like him. The stuff is really good. If they didn't believe in him, they'd have traded him by now, because believe me, he's been asked about a ton. He was their number one prospect. He's still their number one prospect. So they believe in him. I'm always hesitant to say anything about Forrest Whitley. I have no idea. For all I know, he could be their number one starter by next July, and for all I know, he could be not pitching. I've stopped trying to make predictions on Forrest Whitley. As far as other guys I'd look out for, Tyler Ivey is a guy he's from Spring. He went to Texas A&M. He got added to the 40-man roster a couple of weeks ago. Kind of has a herky-jerky delivery. Profiles a little bit more as a reliever, but is a starter. Peter Solomon, in that same vein. Brandon Bielak came up this year and did some good things. Brian Abreu is a guy that they really need to get going. Brian Abreu was really good at the end of 2019, actually made the playoff bullpen. But the COVID shutdown really did a number on him. He came back he reported to summer camp and he was overweight. Just couldn't really throw the ball for strikes. And this is a guy that pitching coach Brent Strom said, could be a 200 inning starter in the big leagues. And if they get him right, if they get Brian Abreu right, and if they can somehow get something from Forrest Whitley, that's very good depth to have behind their starting. And that's the one place where you have to feel comfortable if you're an Astros fan. You have to feel comfortable in your pitching depth because they have a lot of it. Chuck asks a good question. Do you worry about the future of newspapers when it comes to covering sports? Will it all be online before too long? Yes, every day. I worry about that every day. I'm lucky that, I'll tell you this just to kind of illustrate how, fickle the business can be. The day I started at the Chronicle, there was a layoff on the sports staff. It's just, I hear it seems like every month or two, I've got a friend that either is on furlough or is laid off. And that was before the pandemic. And now the pandemic has really, made it difficult. But I take solace in two things. People will always care about the Astros, and people will always want the news. And it may change in the medium that they receive it. Look, we put out a paper every day, but I can guarantee you that we're more devoted and invested into what does well online than what does well in the paper. So we're already thinking like that. But yeah, the future of newspaper scares me because I'm the oldest 27-year-old you ever meet. I love the print paper. I love seeing my name in print. I love getting the physical copy. And those days are going away. And I'm not naive to think that, but there's always going to be news and somebody's always going to have to write it. So hope I can be that guy. Eddie asks, when you write something negative about a player, do they get pissed off and say something to you? Yes. And that's kind of what I talked about, being able to build a relationship where these guys know what your job is. I think if I write something negative, I get received a little bit more favorably from these guys, to be honest with you, because I'm there every day and they see me being there every day. They see me doing my due diligence. I'm always fair. I like to think I'm fair, and the players will tell me that they think I'm fair, and they respect that. But these guys, some of them are prima donnas, believe me. Some of them come out and they don't like some stuff that's been written, and they'll tell you. But most of these guys, or a good bit of these guys, they know when they've played poorly. Like, these guys have been around long enough to know that they get covered every day, that everything they do gets out there. And if they blow a save, or if they don't pitch well, or if they strike out in a big situation, like, it's my job to write it. Now, I think where the line is crossed a little bit, and this is what I try not to do. I try not to ever question effort, because I know what I see, but I can't put myself in these guys' bodies. Like, I don't know what they've been through. I don't know if they're dealing with injuries and stuff. I don't ever question effort unless like somebody tells me that I trust, like, this guy's dogging it or this guy's not trying. Like, I don't question effort. And, I try not to overstep my bound. I write only what's based in facts. Like, Roberto Osuna got very mad at me once because I wrote that, I think I wrote that he was imploding. And he was, because he had a 6 ERA in his last 8 or 10 outings. It's like, that's not like, I'm sorry you don't like the verb imploding, but it's what you are. So basically my response is, in a very nice way, my response is like, if you don't like it, play better. You can pitch better, you can play better. But look, I've never had a contentious, well, I wouldn't say that. My conversations with these guys are not as contentious maybe as you would think they are. They'll pull me to the side and we'll talk, and it'll be just the tone that we're talking right now. And I'll be like, I got to tell the truth. I can't put lipstick on a pig. Like, if you guys are playing, they went on a road trip this year. They went 2-9 on an 11-game road trip. And it's like, how do you make that look good? Like, you just don't. So, again, it's about knowing the relationships we have with these guys, and more, it's about knowing that these guys understand what they signed up for. They understand the scrutiny they're under in the media. and they understand that if they play poorly, it's going to be out there. Other than the Astros, who should fans be thinking about as favorites in the AL? Well, the Yankees are very good. I don't think the Red Sox are going to be very good. Cora will give them a little bit more energy, but they're just not. They were awful last year. I don't know if it was just they gave up, but they were god awful. The White Sox are really, really doing a lot in free agency. That makes me believe that they're gonna be something to contend with. They already had that young core of Tim Anderson, Eloy Jimenez, Jose Abreu, who won the MVP this year, Yohan Moncada. They've got Dallas Keuchel in their rotation. They've got Lucas Giolito. They just acquired Lance Lynn from the Rangers. I'm not sure what their bullpen looks like off the top of my head, but I would say if you're looking for a sleeper, the White Sox. They're loading up in free agency and they could be good. That's all I got in the chat. So if any of you guys,
Chandler, I'm gonna. We have one more question,
Yep.
and then we'll wrap things up. Wayne, did you still have a question? Well, we may have lost Wayne. Listen, Chandler, I want to thank you.
well, they asked,
You there?
I am.
Okay.
Ian asked a question for us over here. That was
Okay.
Ian.
Why don't you wrap it up for us, Ian? Last question.
No, you got another one? Hold on.
I already did, but I can ask another question.
go ahead.
That's fine. Who do you see as like being kind of like an organizational depth kind of guy that I don't know how much you follow like our minor leagues, but an organizational kind of depth guy that can maybe provide like a spark for the team and be called up sometime this year?
You mean like an Alvarez or like a Tucker
Well,
from the last 2 years?
Noli
Like-
Curtis, who like someone who
Oh,
maybe
okay.
like top of the list and kind of shine this year.
It's so hard to project because they didn't have a minor league season this year. So I don't know
Yeah.
how these guys are going to show up. Like, I mean, a lot of these guys that weren't in the minor leagues, like, and if they were like in their home countries in these Latin countries, like, I don't know if they did any baseball activity for a year. So it's going to be hard to project. I guess I'll be boring and say Forrest Whitley. Like, again, like I said, I hate predicting things about Forrest Whitley. But he's a guy that I do know worked out. He was at the alternate training site. He threw. He looked good some days. He looked bad others. So maybe he's a guy, if he puts it all together, they want him. They want him to be good, and they want him to come up. And I think if he does, he's got that cachet about him, and he's got that just aura about him. Like, fans have been waiting on this kid to come up for 4 years now. So I feel like he would be the guy where, like, if he's ready, and in July, if they're scuffling a little bit, if they bring up Forrest Whitley, like, the fans would get more into it, and like there would be a little bit more buzz, just like Tucker in 2018, just like Alvarez in 2019. So I'll cop out and say Whitley. But Eddie, no, Tony La Russa was not a good hire for the White Sox. I think that's going to be a disaster. I think that is going to be a complete disaster. But they're loading the team up. I think the reason they're doing this, they're loading the team up so he can't even screw it up. Like, they're going to be so good that you just write the names in and just don't mess up the bullpen and you'll be fine. But no, it was a bad hire.
Chandler, this was great. It's nice to know someone as informative and passionate is covering our Astros. And we appreciate you taking some time with us this evening. Really appreciate it. And we hope to have you back again in the future.
For sure, guys. I appreciate you all having me. Like I said, have a happy Hanukkah, happy early Hanukkah, and have a very nice holiday season. And I hope you and yours stay safe and sane through 2020. And let's hope for a vaccine here soon.
Exactly. Well said. Amen.
All
And
right.
Paul, thank you for hooking this up with Chandler. We appreciate it very much. And guys, as Chandler said, stay safe. Happy Hanukkah. And I hope to see all of y'all soon.
Let me just say one more thing to Chandler. Besides thanking him, it was an excellent presentation. He was very forthcoming with, the kind of explanations that we wanted to hear. But Chandler, I've got one more request for you. Okay, and that request is, I want to have dinner with you one night. I've got a lot of questions to ask you about LSU.
I don't have the answers for that. I wish I had.
You'll
I
have
wish
opinions.
I wish I had the answers.
Chandler, run quick the other way. Let me tell you, run quick the other way.
I don't have. Maybe talk to Julian. Maybe talk to Julian about the Tide. He'd have all the answers about Alabama. Like that's how you run that. Talk to him because he knows how to run. They know how to run a program. You want to get on that level?
But Chandler, you don't know this. He went to Tulane. He didn't go to Alabama.
Oh well, we can't all.
Hey, Chandler, welcome to our congregation. And
Yeah.
Paul's the apex there, the LSU.
At least I don't have to watch him play a bowl game. At least I'm done watching them after the next 2 weeks. That's the best thing about today.
Have a good night, everybody.
All right, thank you all.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Brian. See you, buddy.